Today is an amazing day. It's been a few weeks in coming. I've been bugging Stacey Harding, who is the director of the new Crime Time Freefall, but she also was the director of the smash hit Round and Round. And so she said when the mystery was coming out, she would come on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome, Stacey. How are you today?
This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel.
Excited to have you here. Welcome, Stacey. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm so great. So happy to be here with you. Good morning.
Thank you. How's Vancouver today? Is it snowy and cold?
It's chilly, but it's actually beautifully sunny, which, in the month of February, we are ever so grateful to have that it's not socked in and snowing or raining or all the things that it does here at this time of year. Yeah.
So we are
Okay.
kind of just chit-chatting a little before, and we're talking the business and
Mhm.
everything about being a director and all that. So the first question I really have for you is, so now you're a director and it has become a business for you, right? It's your job. Has it
That's right.
kind of like taken away your ability just to sit back and kick back and watch a movie aimlessly and enjoy it as a fan, or are you like always dissecting and looking at it
Oh,
this way and that way?
yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's it really depends on the movie itself, right? Like if I can it's a conscious decision to kind of like shut off the movie making, you know, wheel, if you will, and just enjoy the characters in the story. I think when the characters in the story are coming together well and it's entertaining um and I can lean into that, then I'm in really great shape. When that all that stuff starts to fall apart, then you start to see the other stuff, right? Or if it's just a little bit clunky and in how it wound up getting together, that becomes kind of difficult to watch, right? Especially if I have like my children. So I have young adult children who have been dragged through the business their whole lives, right? So now we sit on the couch, and as soon as one of them starts, it's like, oh, did you see that? Oh, did you catch that? Oh, is this? And then it's all over. Then nobody gets to watch the movie anymore and enjoy it. It's just 100% dissection from beginning to end.
So you say you have some little kid, or they're not little kids anymore, but obviously
I
at some point in their life they were. So did they
They
take you
were.
to school and for like Parents' Day and what you did, and you got to say like I make movies, and we're like all the boring parents who are like, oh, I sell like pharmaceuticals or I'm
Right.
whatever, and then you're like I make movies. Were you like the hit?
I think, yeah, it's, their friends often would come over and they'd be like, so like, oh, what are you working on right now? And that part of it was really fun. But in the true style of kids, they're like, oh, mom, do you have to come to school today and talk about what you do?
Uh,
Maybe we'll just not do that with you today. No, it's cute. Yeah, they're pretty cool humans. Mm.
okay. As once again, you're a director, so you have a little different take on things than just a layman like me who just sits and watches movies. But from you, what is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, that's so hard. There are movies I like for like totally different reasons. Like I watched Across the Universe, and it was a movie for me that was like I had such a love affair with it. I was just not up to speed enough with what the movie was. And so when I watched it, I kind of got taken away on it. And I can still go back, like I go back and watch it now, and I just absolutely love it. And The Holiday. If you want my very favorite Christmas movie of all time, the one I can like shamelessly watch at least a couple of times over Christmas, it's The Holiday for sure.
Uh,
That's the one that is just bottle of wine, quiet room, really just enjoy it. I love it so much.
Now, are you able to once again look at that just completely as a
Oh,
fan, or is it because it's a good movie and then also from your professional skill set, you're like, oh, it's a good movie in that aspect too. So it's
oh yeah.
entertaining and technically sound.
Yeah, it's so like, yes. So yes, it's from all aspects. And I think that's what happens if I watch a movie, especially if I watch it more than once, because the first time the story can take me away. But when I watch it a second time, often I'll start to see the stuff that was a little bit, clunky. And it doesn't necessarily take away from my enjoyment of the story. I think, so before I was a director, I was a first assistant director. So I ran crews for 20 years. And so the technical side of things and understanding, like, I guess the business side of stuff, like what we were talking about before, really there's a reason sometimes why you just don't have time to correct things. It's often not that they're not seen. It's just that you cannot recover it in the course of your production day without sacrificing something that is more important, ultimately, to the cut or to the edit or to the storytelling, or just to, the technical side of what getting your day looks like. So I think I have a lot of compassion for things that you see in movies that are a little bit clunky, where you look and you're like, oh, it would have been nice to see their face in that moment or not. But um, when I watch it the second time, that's often when I see those things. And movies that are my favorite movies, yeah, I don't see, like, The Holiday. I don't see anything. I don't know. There might be stuff there, but I have such a love affair with it. It doesn't matter to me what it is. I'm
Now,
just in.
you say like there's like clunky things and you have to make these decisions. Is there one, just if you're looking at your over career, one
Yeah.
of those decision that you just had to make that lives out there that still to this day kind of every now and then wakes you up at night like, why?
Yeah. When we did a Christmas sale, which was a couple years ago, um, we had the night where we were going out on the sailboats to do all the sail passes for the what was the Christmas sail pass with the boats all lit up, and we were trying to get out at sunset, and through a succession of technical challenges, we wound up getting onto the water when basically it was night. And so the things that we thought we were going to be able to navigate technically in that low light level where you still had, like, scope to what was behind, became having to navigate it at night. And that the complexity of that just went entirely sideways. So it was just one of those things where you had to divide and conquer, what, rather than it being able to, and to the credit of the cast who stuck in there brilliantly. It just became like, say these words, the camera's right here, this is what we need to get, okay, get the camera around. And we had two boats side by side, so there was a lot of technical things out in the water that we needed to do, which had made sense at the time when we were going to be at sunset and see this whole marina and all this beautiful stuff behind. But it became really tough. And then, on that day, that was the very last shot that we did of the movie, with all of the cast and all of the stuff, which should have been this beautiful ending to this movie that we done, and like high five everybody and all this great stuff. But it wound up wrapping the cast, not being tied up, but they were like, 50 yards away on another boat. They got wrapped off the movie. They went to a different marina than I got docked at, because I was on the tech boat and they were on the other boat. And then they were like wrapped in the van, and I couldn't say anything to them. They were just gone. And I was like, oh my God, this is the worst night ever. Not only did that not land, I mean, it's still beautiful in the movie. And I think that's, one of the things, like, when all hell breaks loose, you just got to hope that somehow, like, we literally edited that. Like, there's nothing left to stick in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, every possible usable frame is in there, like, making it all happen, right? And so I was sick to my stomach until I saw the cut. That was, it was like 3 a.m, and I chose to walk back to the hotel, which was like a kilometer walk for me, but I just needed to walk. It just was like, I didn't want to. But until I saw that from the editor, like, it just made my stomach sick for weeks. And it's still like, when I watch the movie, like, people really enjoyed it, and it's still a beautiful moment, and it still pays off. It's just nowhere near what I thought it was going to be in my head. So that is the one out of the movies that I've directed that I can stay, still bugs me, right? Like, I still have moments where I was like, oh, if we had only got to do the thing. Um, but you kind of have to let it go, because, the other side about directing is like, you can put all those things together, but, somebody in the producing end of things or network end of things, like, because I don't only work for Hallmark, I work for other networks as well. And you everybody has a vision about where they want to get to. So there is this need to sort of separate yourself almost from the end product, right? Like, where we just have to do the very best we can, given the environment and whatever's happening, crazy rain or technical meltdowns or whatever the thing is. And at the end of the day, you put it together the very best way you can. But then everybody else will, finesse and they adjust, to what their vision is before it comes out. So there's almost like a separation of attachment that I think we as directors have to go through. Otherwise, we are miserable.
We don't want that. It's interesting.
We don't want that.
You kind of brought up something that we were recently discussing in an episode, and
Mm,
that's how sort of there's like a whole team that makes a movie. So an actor is doing something and they're the most visible person, so they probably tend to get blamed. But at the same time, you got a director who's potentially telling them to do that, which we may not agree with. But then, like you said, there's also downstream, you have an editor or some other people, network who are doing some things that maybe, we'll blame the director for, but it's not there because there's so many different people who go into that. And so you kind of made me just think about that. So is that like one of the things you had to learn as you were getting, going through the ranks about how to emotionally detach yourself a little more? Because it is art, right? And so it's kind of more emotional than, me at work doing a spreadsheet. I don't get,
yeah,
too upset if someone's mad at a spreadsheet because numbers are numbers, right? But for you, it's art, right? So it's got to be a little tougher there, right?
it is. It is really difficult, and I mean, like, the simplified way of explaining it is if you have a when you're on idiot. Okay, you have these wonderful actors that come to the table with the way that they're going to share the character, where it's, we have those conversations on the side. In this format of television, we're moving pretty quickly, right? So at the end of the day, most of the time you've got, 3 or 4 takes probably is about all you've got. So and then you've got to get moving on to get your next piece. So if you have a camera movement that is off at the time where the performance is its best, or you lose a light and the performance is its best, a lot of the time, there are things that are technical that eventually get prioritized over top of that the best performance sometimes. Um, and that's not necessarily where an editor or a director would place the priorities, but you know but it is a business and it is a collaboration, and there are people that look at that from what their perspective is down the road, and they'll sometimes go back to other takes, or they'll make editorial decisions to get around or cut around something where my choice would have been from a storytelling to live with the fact that there was a bump that we couldn't fully fix in post, or something that happened that we couldn't fully fix, or somebody's got like a piece of hair sticking out. That's the other one where you're like, you don't want to stop the take because it's amazing, but you also don't necessarily have the financial ability to go in and visually affect, smooth out and make it so everybody's going to be happy with the visual aspect of it, not even the storytelling aspect of it. And so those decisions get made down the road. So it's challenging because it is an art form. I mean, I think if we lose sight as a director or an actor, or a DP, if we lose sight of the storytelling and the art of what we're doing, that's really too bad. But at the end of the day, like we're the ones that are there actually looking at the art, right? Like the costume designer, that we're the ones that are creating with the production design and everything that goes around it. We're trying to tell this beautiful story about wherever the character's at. If we are thinking too much about the business when we're doing that, then we're in trouble. But there are people that are doing the numbers, right? And so the collaboration of what this is it is a business product. It's knitting a sweater, if you will. All the sweaters are different, and some of them are a little more artful than other sweaters. But at the end of the day, it's product based, right? Um, so you have to. So often when you're watching it, that performance may exist from that actor, but it didn't make the cut, right? And for whatever reason, it wasn't prioritized, or it needed to be altered, or it didn't fit quite tonally for somebody in the process. Like that's just part of it. So I think it's particularly challenging to be and actor and be vulnerable to it. And it's probably why a lot of them don't watch their product when it's done, right? Much in the same way that, like, I had a director that I had worked with a lot years ago, and he said, when we were talking, when I had started directing, he said, "Don't watch your things." He said, "You got to It's like you just got to cut the cord and let it go, and just know that you did the best you can. You put things forward that you thought were had the most value for the product, had the most value to the storytelling. You know, showed what was, put your best foot forward basically for production. And then you have to do this, right? Which is why when a movie like Round and Round hits, right, and where people are enjoying it, or you start to get the feedback where it landed the way it was intended and in, the majority of the places, it's so exciting because you can actually, we have this, it's like bookending, right? We get this great script, we have to make it shootable, the timelines are crazy. We get this incredible cast. They come in. We do everything we can to protect time and to make things happen so that they can, have a little bit of ad libby time and build connection and have the opportunity to really like craft some cool stuff on set. And then it goes through all the layers that it goes through. And then we push it out and people love it. And you're like, yes. Because a lot of the time it's, you don't have the bookend. You never know how people feel about it. You never really get a good response from it. I mean, certainly I troll you a lot on Instagram. Right? But it's an interesting process for sure. And from that creative side of things versus the business side.
Okay, so we've had a producer on just recently for the first
Uh-huh.
time, a director. We've had some writers. We're right now talking, trying to get someone from Hallmark who are in the programming. But can you
Right.
tell me a little bit about how is that whole relationship like work? There's a script that comes, and then they hire a director, and like how do you guys all work together to get the project going? Much less forget the end part, just the
Right.
beginning part. Like what's that whole process?
So, as far as the acquisitions of scripts go, when it comes to the Hallmark side of things, I don't have a lot of purview with that side of it. So often what has happened is there is a producer that is attached to a script. And sometimes it's the Hallmark execs, right? Like they come across something that's amazing and they, have their bottom drawer of their desk basically with the scripts that they love. And then as they from a network perspective are looking at how they want to build their quarters, right? What movies they want to put in, whether they're mysteries or rom-coms or what they're looking for overall, then they pitch their different stories ultimately is how I understand it, and then they get slotted into different quarters essentially. So what happens from when I get involved is um, there'll be a movie that comes my way either from an independent producer or from Hallmark themselves, right? I think a lot of directors that work a lot for them, they know kind of what types of genres that they like us doing, right? And what our product base is and sort of where we fit. So in the case of Round and Round or Love Classified or another series that I did, which hasn't been announced yet, but it will be in the summertime. I
Look at
almost
you,
said
almost slipped.
I was like, "Ah, ah, ah, ah." Because that's what I did a couple days ago, and I was like, darn it. It is a specific type of script and storytelling, right? It's that, it's got a little bit of a comedic edge to it and stuff. And I've worked a lot with Kate Redinger at Hallmark, and so that this product Round and Round came to me because of that relationship and because of the movies that we've done before. Um, but then you get a script, and one of two things, like it's either been heavily vetted and adjusted by the writer to fit the budget and the format, or we get a script that hasn't hit that yet, and so then we have to work with the writer and the producers to go, this is how much money we have, this is how much time we have, and this is how we either need to make an adjustment on the creative while maintaining the story, which happens a lot. A lot of the time, there's too many cast in movies where we can't afford the budget that goes along with having as many cast members. So that often comes down too many locations, that kind of thing. Where if we And I think that's one of the things that I do well because I come out of production. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at how can we put a number of sets or scenes into specific sets. So when we're spending our money on the location side, how do we get the best location we can get? How do we get the most beautiful surroundings that helps inform the story? How do we, you know, make our story look like we want it to look like, where we have to shoot, right? Like whether or not that's the valley or the island or um, whatever city it is that we're in. It's just you're trying to get the most supported and beautiful background that you can in order to put this great story into. And so we look at all those things and then work with the writer in order to make adjustments to the script. So I think, there's the initial idea that comes in from a writer, which is what catches everybody's attention, but then there's the adjustment of the story. And sometimes the story has to adjust. And sometimes that's a good thing, because we streamline things and we make it a little more digestible. And also sometimes the story's amazing, and really what we're doing in prep is we're fighting to keep as much of it as we possibly can, right? So how can we get super creative in the way we shoot it, or how we navigate it to protect all of the pieces of it that we possibly can, which would have been the case for Round and Round, when we made that movie. And certainly, in the Crime Time Mysteries Freefall, that was also the case. We had a really tight script, was in really great shape, but we did have to curate some of the locations down and then just really get focused on how to, creatively navigate a few things to make sure that that we got to have the fun we wanted to have and protect the story that we wanted to protect. So it's an interesting fight. And a lot of the time, like the network is always super supportive, right? Because they want the best product. And so, working with somebody like Emily Merlin at Hallmark, it's a great relationship. We've done a few movies together. We understand each other's sensibilities, which is so lovely. Um, and and so that's quite a great place, because sometimes I'll send a photo of like a location and they'll be like, "What? What the hell are you talking about right now?" But you get on the phone, or you adjust, and you sort of show how we're going to use it, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay, got it." And so when you get the final footage, for example, Crime Time Mysteries, we worked in a legion, in a Canadian veterans legion here, and the initial photos were like, "Oh, what?"
Wasn't looking all that great.
Have you lost your mind? But then when you watch when you watch the show, it was like so great. Like again, like those locations where you're like, um, also, can I just say how fun it is to work for Hallmark now? Like I worked for mainly US studio, um, major studios in my AD career. I didn't have a lot of Hallmark on my resume, coming up. The little bit of stuff I did, it always had like that old school, very curated. It has to look a certain way. And what I really love about what I get to do now is like bring the Legion forward, for example, and have everybody be like in once they understood the concept of it, be in for things that are a little bit more, I'd say, visceral or layered, or um, less old school Martha Stewart, and that like just we get to have a little more texture in what we're doing, and it's so super fun.
You're saying like you get brought in there. That's, I guess, is where I'm trying to figure out. Is one of the things we always hear is when a Hallmark goes, they go and they go fast, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's a few days beforehand that actors are cast. How far in
Yeah.
advance are you typically, like, do you have a fairly generous window ahead of time before all that happens, or are you also pulled in with like they get a
Catapulted.
week and a half, you get 3 weeks, or I don't know what things
Yeah.
take, or are they you actually have ample time, and then when it finally gets to that point, then it goes into hyperdrive.
I think it's hyperdrive right from the get-go. So, for example, there's a project that is circling right now that I can't exactly talk about, um, but it will green light, and I'll be on a plane within 36 hours of the green light. Um, but you can't move forward with it, do it, note it, do any of those things until it green lights. And so, and once you land, you have 3 weeks of prep. And within the 3 weeks of prep, within the first week, you're starting to get casting tapes, and that casting tapes, that is its own process. That's, a week or 10 days long. And then you're basically into almost the shoot, because you're costume fitting and then you're in the shoot. And you're costume fitting whoever works the first 3 days. And then they're like, we're shooting, and they're costume fitting, and you're doing all the things that you need to do. So it really is like getting shot out of a cannon. On occasion, I will have access to scripts in advance of the start date. It's not overly common, but it does happen. But more or less, it's a 3-week thing. I've done projects where I've got called in the morning, I'm in the car, and I have a script come in, and by that afternoon, I've read it and I'm on calls, and by the next day, I'm in the office and moving forward. So it can be 24 hours and you're on the ground having to figure out how to make it. Or you can have a little bit of a lead into the script, but also like, until you understand what budget you're dealing with and what your production challenges are. And also, a lot of the time it comes down to the technical crew that's available too, right? Because you can get creative, but if you don't have tech teams that can deal with creativity, you got to get skinny and fast and shoot differently. Depending on what you find yourself with as well. So there's always a bunch of different factors that kind of come into it. But I would say in the TV series and or TV movie format, we don't have like that luxurious lead up that that they do, in the other world of things, which must be wonderful.
Now we're going to get into your actual work.
Okay.
You've done both rom-coms and mysteries.
Mhm.
You have a preference for which genre you like better?
That's tough. I have to say, like, I love them both for different things. The mysteries, when they're well written, and I really enjoyed the Crime Time mysteries. I think you're gonna like that one. When it's well written and the clues are really connective, and you get to have a little bit of fun with that. I love that. I love the mystery. I think I would say is my favorite one to shoot. Um, but it's like a hair above the rom-coms, just a hair.
Don't worry, we're not going to tell Hallmark
Yeah,
not to give you any
don't
more
know. Oh my God.
rom-coms.
It's really I like being able to curate people's experience of things using shadow and light and camera movement, and creating those. And I think you get to do that in mysteries a little bit more than the rom-com land, right? So there is an experiential thing that happens when you're in that mystery world, where you get to build a little more tension and a little more things in that. And that, to me, as a director, is super fun. So for that reason, I think I'd have to lean into the mystery world just a hair. But well,
we're a mystery podcast, so we're certainly not going to complain with you.
Yeah, okay, good.
Or argue with you, I should say, not complain, argue with you. All right, but going back to a rom-com a little bit, you directed Love Classified, and that was like a huge moment in the Hallmark universe, right? Because you had the same-sex kiss, the relationship there. Like, why do you think, and it to date, it still has the most controversy, I guess, on my page, on my Hallmark movie reviewer, where I do the rom-coms, where people just still to this day argue about it. Why do you think Hallmark, knowing they had that what was coming, went to you to say, we're going to trust you to create this groundbreaking, revolutionary movie that's going to create havoc in the world of Hallmark fans?
I know, right? It's funny. I've done a few projects for them that have created some controversy.
Yes, we're going to get to those.
I think out of the projects that I've done with them, what Hallmark saw about how I do my job is that I like to really ground my characters in every day. I don't like to over dramatize things. I don't like to lean into the, you know, the sensationalizing of things. I think that there's something a lot more interesting in really being rooted in our storytelling and really rooted in what it looks like and just and so I think that that's part of the reason that project had come to me because at that point I'd done a few projects for them that have had been serialized or they were looking to serialize them and so I think that there was confidence that I could deliver that in a bit of a fresh way. I use my camera, like the way I shoot things, it was also very different for them. Um, I have a lot more movement in the things that I do, or just the way that I guess the style is that I shoot, which is just what I do. And so they were really interested in that project, having a little bit more of a, I don't know if a fresher look is really the way to categorize what I do, but it was just different for them. Um, and so, um, and so it came to me. I read the script. I was actually away when they sent it to me, and Kate had called, and I was like, okay, well, it's my birthday. I'm away. I'm back on the weekend. I'll read it. And then I pulled it up on my phone and I started reading the beginning of the script. And then I sat on my phone for 2 hours and I read the whole script and I immediately
Aren't they
messaged
like
her back.
110
I'm in.
pages?
I'm in. I love that story. I think out of the movies that I've done, it's the story that I love the most, right? Like it is my number one experience, like working with that cast and having that story to tell for me. And the way we got to tell it, even like on the technical side of things, I loved very much. Like we did a lot of things that was just not really seen in Hallmark at that time. And it did, there was a lot of controversy to it, but I just, that never bothered me. I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a director is that you just get to tell stories. And I think as long as we're really honest with the story itself, then it's okay if it has people talking. Like, shouldn't that be what it's about?
One of my take on it, and it turned into a big soapbox for me, which I still am on, is the people who are so against it, they just, as you said, sensationalize the female kiss, right? The female, two females kissing. And I was like, you missed, do you think that's what the movie is? You completely missed it. It's essentially a tale of the family and their love for each other and accepting each other and their trials and everything. That's just like such a minor part, but of course it is what, well, of the haters, I should say,
Yeah.
98% of them just couldn't get past it, but they didn't even see the movie because they boycotted it anyhow, so they didn't really get to know that. And that's why I would tell people, I'm like, it's a movie about like family love, not lesbian love, which is what they all associated it with. Now,
Yeah.
have you read like the IMDb comments and things like that, or for your own sanity you're like, I'm
Oh,
not going anywhere near
I
that?
do a little bit, but I also like, I guess I have a philosophy about that to some degree. It's like, especially with online commenting, it's like anybody can comment online about anything they want to. They don't have to have seen it. They don't have to have informed themselves about it. They don't have to educate themselves. They just get to, spit whatever vitriol makes sense to them in whatever that moment is. And I think that's one of the things about, IMDb in general, or any of those online platforms, um, Facebook, Insta, whatever it is that you're on. And I think that to place value in that type of commenting is really misplaced. Um, I think it's too bad that people actually aren't interested in knowing a little bit more about their fellow person, right? Or that they believe that their viewpoint is solely the platform in which to judge all. And I just, if I was worried about it, it would take up way too much of my time and energy. I'm just not interested in it. Like, it's, if we've done a bad job, like if I did a movie where I took that story and I made that story a lesbian, movie about and sensationalized a kiss that was about love is love, if I took that movie and I sensationalized any of the relationships that anybody had in that movie outside of that, particular, Ari and Kat component, like that would have been something to talk about because that would have not been doing my job like at all. If I made anything of like if you skew the information, like that's not what we should be doing, right? That story is about family love and it's about love is love and it's about community. And it's about conversation and
Right.
being open to talking and open to forgiving and open to seeing, right? It's about possibility and hope. That's what it's about. And if people aren't interested in actually seeing that part of something, I can't help them with that. So when it comes to the online commentary and also like from my, other world, I've been on projects before where we've had to bring in counseling and HR support and all sorts of stuff for actors who are being berated and, nattered at um, online by people. And I think it's offside, really
Yeah,
offside.
that's crazy. Let's
Yeah.
move on to Heart in the Game. What brought you like that was a really interesting, good movie. Hallmark
Yeah.
doesn't have a great history of being able to portray sports movies well because they're actors and they're not sports, right? They're not
Yep.
athletes
Yep.
necessarily doing that. But what was it that drew you to this particular project?
I thought it was really the element of how the high school sweethearts kind of stumbled back on each other. Like that to me was pretty sweet. I'm also a massive fan of Erin Cahill, and I would direct her
Aren't we
in
all?
I don't know, dish soap commercial if they ask me to. Um, she's like one of my favorite humans in the entire world. And then, Marco on board was really great. I think the story itself felt really grounded to me and nice and approachable and we got to have a little fun with the baseball and it was minus 16 when we shot that baseball stuff. It was so cold, it was unbelievable. The sun came out for like 7 minutes, which is when we got a lot of our shots around the plate and stuff. And I think for what that was, it felt, and I'm not a huge baseball player, but it felt good. And people were certainly connected with it, and we didn't get laughed out of
Right.
the sporting world for doing it. But I I am really a sucker for stories about people getting a second chance. I'm really a sucker for things about this is where I am, but I can make my life different, right? That how I am in this moment doesn't define how I can show up tomorrow. And seeing that in shows, that I have a real attachment to that. I think their stories worth telling.
Other thing it did was it tackled mental health in a way that I think was very sincere, not
Mm.
necessarily like what you expect from a Hallmark movie because
Yep.
they like to keep them light. And so I think you're able to do it in a way, like I said, that still came through sincere, but kept in those
Mm.
Hallmark, guardrails, so to speak, which have loosened up definitely over, the last few years from what they were. But was that like a challenge for you of trying to figure out how to deal with that and keep it still Hallmarky?
We had some really good discussions about that in prep. We all of us have a relationship to mental health, right? Like whether it's with family or friends or the work environment or whatever it is. Again, like in that world of, for me, it was really important to keep it clean and keep it focused on what it was about. And we have like 83 minutes to do it.
Right.
So, without taking the story to a place where you lose the relationship piece to it, or, the everyday piece to it. I think the decisions were really conscious about how we maintained it throughout the story and how we made it, how he was able to share how debilitating it was in certain places and how we were able to sort of support that with the conversation, like in the kitchen with his uncle when he returned to his mom's house. Or,
Right.
sometimes it's the things that they're surrounded by, kind of going back to that conversation we had before about when you get these movies and how you navigate what's in the script versus what you shoot. What was important is that when we found the house that was his mother's house, that it told the story around him, because ultimately we know that we don't have the time story-wise in order to be deep diving all of those conversations, right? To tell the audience like the whole story. But when he's standing surrounded by his mother's things in this sweet house, that tells a lot of the story already, so we can so it's informing a different part of it. I really I was really proud of how we were able to walk the line with that. How to me it felt like we were able to start a conversation that we didn't need to wrap up in a nice little bow, right? And hand it off by the end of the show, but just to start a conversation.
All right, now we get to talk about Round and Round. As we were before we started recording, I told you it's
Yeah.
just for me. I like my holiday movies, but when January, or actually, I guess they usually end around mid-December rolls around, I don't really watch them often, after that. And Round and
Mhm.
Round is one that I've kept in the DVR. The other
Mhm.
thing is a movie that I had several people I knew, my wife being one of them, who aren't Hallmark fans. And I'm like, you got to just watch this one because it feels so much more like, a Netflix rom-com or not a Hallmark rom-com per se.
Mhm.
And I will say these people who don't like Hallmark movies all enjoyed it as well. So when you got that script, like you said, did you know that you had gold and you're like, oh, this is going to be so good? Or was it something like as it started happening, it evolved and then you started realizing, oh, hey, this may be something that could be so.
Yeah. No, the script was amazing, like, and so this project was one that came together very, very fast. So, it received the green light and we had to get going very quickly, and that was like going into um, the SAG strike. So we had a very defined line, time frame essentially where we had to get it done. Yeah, when I read it, I was like, this is genius. And it really became one of those things where how do we protect as much as we possibly can in the story? Because we knew that for the budget that we were going to need to work with to get it done, was we were not going to be, we were going to have to be really thoughtful about how to protect it and what to protect. To the credit of Ryan Murphy, who was the was the exec that came on, who does a lot of movies with Hallmark, right? And Kate Redinger at Hallmark. We all knew that we had something special, and it was all really a lot of work to protect as much as we possibly could to get it going. So, like the dance floor that starts off the movie. So, one of the things that you start to learn the more of these shows that you do is like there's certain things, especially when you're shooting them late in the schedule. Um, there's things you have to protect because ultimately, with the budget, as we move along, things disappear. And so we we found that dance floor and I was like, okay, does it fit in the budget? And the answer was yes, we can make it work. We have to get really lean in a couple of other places. And I'm like, let's make those decisions. Let's like run through stuff. Let's make sure we've protected it because obviously we have a mark we absolutely have to hit. But then I threatened everybody. I'm like, so help me God, if anybody brings up that dance floor on any meeting, ever, anybody says that out loud on a Zoom meeting, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna kick you in the knee as soon as we get off the call. Like, no, because it literally shot on the last day or second to last day of production. And so like the whole movie, I was like, please don't cut the dance floor, please don't cut the dance floor, please don't cut the dance floor. But it made it, and then when everybody was in that room and we were doing like that was so much fun. I was like dressed up. I had my 80s gear on. I had a big pink fluffy skirt on, and a bunch of us had like our 80s day on set. We just had the best time ever. Um, but yeah, the more when so you would ask me about how I'd met Vic.
Right.
And so Vic had come on, we had a read through for Love Classified. And on that read through for Love Classified, we had one of our cast members was on another project and unable. So we had a cast member who couldn't join us for our read through, and so Vic came on as a reader for us. We none of us had met her before.
Is that like a normal thing where you just get some rando to come in
Yeah,
and
we
read?
literally will hire an actor. Like casting will reach out, they'll hire somebody. to jump on and to read parts if those actors aren't available to come on for the call. And so on this particular one, Vic came on as our reader, and we all got off that, like, the Love Classified call, and we were like, okay, great script, loved it, like, couple little notes, and then literally we were all like, "Who is that woman? Like, she's unbelievable." And so she was, like, immediately on the register for Hallmark and everybody else. And this just wound up being like, as soon as Kate had called me, because Kate had been on that call back on Love Classified, about this story, she said, "I really think this is the part for Vic." And so I was like, Yeah, hell yeah, it is." Like, it fit her so brilliantly, and that became so much fun. She is a force.
That makes so much sense now because as I look at her, she's just nowhere on the like rom-com radar. Like she's a comedian doing all these skits and things like that. And I've been like wanting to see more of her because she is fantastic in that movie. But I can't, like, I'm on YouTube watching her. So that's why I just couldn't figure out how the heck did she get cast in this one. That's a great story. So when you're filming a movie that's a time warp movie,
Mm.
is there like any particular challenges that you had to deal with in that you don't normally deal with in a movie?
Yeah, I think it's the well, I think it's the cast who have to deal with it, as much as I do. But when you have that repetition of scenes, right? So then we shoot the same thing and you're shooting the same coverage over and over and over again until it shifts. And so, we did, for example, on Rick Hoffman, we do that push in as he's saying his whole speech, which part of it is in the movie and part of it isn't. But, there was a big push in kind of through the living room to him as he, is saying his speech about thank you for coming, and as he's talking to his family. But then, on the next loop it repeats, and on the next loop it repeats. So but there's a little bit of a difference between what he's saying in each loop. And so then you would do it and then be like, okay, now we're going to do this. And so then you would do it again, and now we're going to do this. But meanwhile you're like, okay, so in this loop you're sitting here and you're there, but you're still there and you got to go over there. And so like there's this whole mind thing that happens and you also have 11 minutes to do it, and you're on fire at the same time. And so um that is the thing, I think, overall, is making just the tiniest adjustments, and then being able to ensure that as we did other scenes in the room and other things, that all of that stuff shifted around, to maintain the continuity between, each of those loops as we were doing it. So, I would say these movies are a massive, when you love 1 and 2, it's a massive credit to them because they are so tactical, in these TV movie format anyway. But, particularly, they just really had to trust that what we were doing next, like, that my direction or what I was asking them to do was what we needed to do. And I can't imagine that feels very comfortable to them all the time, right? Because it's a really disjointed way of telling the story, because they've got to find that emotion, they've got to find that stuff, and we've got to find those beats. And we have like the repetition, like when Brian was coming in the door, the first time that he and Vic see each other, when she's standing beside the table, and her grandma's talking to her about this lovely boy that she's got coming over to meet her. Like every time he came in the room it was something different, but it was the same camera setup, right, or same repetition. And so I think it's really actually quite tough on the actors, and those guys did it seamlessly. They were really fantastic sports about it. But um yeah, not simple. Like when we would have a scene where you could just shoot the scene like a scene, you're like, "Yes! We don't have to do this 6 different times. This is fantastic."
I think one of the great things that Vic brought to this role was she's had great cadence with how she delivered her lines. But
Yeah.
the other thing I think in this, I'll give you credit, but also I guess to the actors and the writing, is those secondary characters,
Mhm.
the guys in the comic shop, her cousin, Cynthia, that there was such a fine line where they could have just gone wrong and been annoying, right? Because they just were right on it, and yet they came through completely endearing where you just loved them. So I think that to me was maybe one of the biggest credits to this movie, of taking them right to that point and keeping them likable, keeping them just fantastic,
Yeah.
with still being a
Oh,
little bit weird in the
yeah.
quirk, right?
First of all, when you work with amazing actors, you just work with amazing actors. And there wasn't anybody who read this script and didn't um, come to the table like with their A game when they hit the floor. Like everybody showed up on the day and they were ready to go, and it was really great. And to the credit of Hallmark, because in that casting, right, like you have different directions certainly that we could have gone with different roles, but everybody was game to get these beautiful characters that had just a unique style to them, which I'm a big fan of. I like a good quirky character. I like quirky humans. I think they're super fun. And like in the Crime Time Mystery, we had a lot of fun with casting as well. So hopefully you will feel the same way about them when you see that show. But the thing about the performances all the way around was there was such ownership and grounding in all of it. Like the nerds just were such nerds, and they were so brilliant, and they were so honest in their delivery. And that is the thing that I think makes them endearing and engaging, because they weren't leaning into being a nerd. They just were a nerd.
Right.
So, they weren't putting on they're not getting dressed up to play a role. They just came in and they were just being that human. And that is, it's talent and it's prep for them, right? So when they came on the floor and they had the opportunity, they just really leaned into all things, and also really trusted me to be able to come in and just give it all, and then allow us to pull back, a little bit rather than playing it safe. And that, allowed us to do some really cool things in that movie. Yeah, it was super fun.
Your main dork positive.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
so more positive. Yeah.
the we have to move on, but I will say my
Yeah.
favorite. I think we could probably talk about this movie and dissect it scene by scene, and I would love it. Like I say, I'm a admitted fanboy of it. But
Uh-huh.
the time warp in there, I loved that too scene, because part of it was, yeah, they were kind of making fun of her and she acknowledged it, but then she's like, okay, let's just move on. Like I just loved the way she rolled out of it, of gave them their little moment, but then let's just get back to this. I thought that was a brilliant scene there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah. Super
but we
fun.
are here to talk about mysteries, and it's taken a little while to get there, but we do have to get there. I have to ask, what the hell is with you and cliffhangers? Two of the most like talked about things of cut color murder, ending on that, and then of course Mystery 101, which to
Dun,
this day
dun,
people are in
dun.
therapy about those final 5 minutes. Like, do you purposely like
Yeah.
I like the cliffhanger there, or was this just like, hey, this is my script, I'm rolling with it, so there we go.
In the case of Mystery 101, that is a little bit different than the color murder world of things, right? It's to do the beginning or the first episode in what they think might be a wheelhouse mystery. You leave the cliffhanger, but you're not really sure what's going to come next, right? So you do the cliffhanger. You do it very much the way, like, it wraps up nicely in the script, and they have a thought about where it's going to go, and I guess that's not different than to the 101 piece of it. But I think the drama level of the walk away from um cut color murder was a little different than the walk away on Mystery 101. I think the Mystery 101, that network supported me, leaning into that a little bit harder. But at that time, we didn't really realize where that wheel was going to go, or that there would be such a heavy, pause in 101. Like, as I think you talked about on your podcast before, like we chatted a little bit about, like, there was a direction we thought that was moving. And so we were really like leaning in and setting up for that. And as I pointed out, like, I do love me a good mystery, and I do love making, things dark and moody and all of that kind of stuff. And that the ending of Mystery 101, like, gave me a really great opportunity to kind of really lean into that. And I had a great time. And we had rain towers and we soaked the hell out of everybody that was involved. I just freaking poured, and we had such like I really felt so great at the end of that one. We turned in something that was really strong. Everybody was super happy. Cast was happy. Like it was all a really good thing. And here we are a couple years later, and we haven't done another one. So that one was a little bit of a surprise because we kind of thought that one was clattering up to something different. And as it does, as the business does, as it shifts, as that and that kind of is what it is. And I don't have magic to talk about, with that. I know there's a lot of love for it still, which says a lot about the quality of the product that was made and the investment of the viewers and stuff. And who knows, right? Like who knows where that goes? I certainly don't. But Cut Color Murder was like totally quirky in a totally different way. Like that script, when you read it, you were like, oh, this is fun. This is different.
Well, I spoke to John Christian Plummer a little bit before, and I goes, "Oh, hey, guess who I'm interviewing? I'm interviewing Stacey, of which
Uh,
obviously Deadly History." I will say he said very nice things about you behind your back. He said you're a wonderful human being and everything. He's like, the only question I'd have for her is, would she ever be willing to work with me again because of what I did to her with that final 5 minutes of that script of sticking that putting you at that place in Hallmark history of,
yeah.
yeah, the most hated
Anytime,
5 minutes of all
Plumber.
Hallmark TV.
Anytime, any day of the week. He is lovely. He's absolutely lovely. Be
All right,
my
so
pleasure.
talking about Cut Color Murder, it
Mm,
had one of the things, and that was one of the movies we really liked, and hope it's not officially canceled, but it has been a while. But one of the things we really liked about it is did have all the campiness of the Hallmark mystery, that sort of that genre. But I
mhm.
think this is like one that had a little bit also a little darkness to it, that it was silly and fun, but then it had a little underlying darkness. How do you like balance that out of having that dramatic mystery and a Hallmark mystery?
To be really honest, often in my world of things, we'll do a take that is very dark and very HBO, and then we'll do a take where we lighten it up a little bit. And often in the edit, we combine those two takes, right? Where it gives us often a little bit more flavor to it, depending on what side of if we're on the, A or B side of the conversation, or um, so it winds up being able to be tailored a little bit kind of by the network as they get into it. I'm a fan of directing things in a way where it's not necessarily where we avoid the phrase, this is a Hallmark movie. Where you go, how is this honest? So if it feels really campy in the moment, is that where we actually need to be? Often is the question, because we can play it really light, or you can play it kind of in a throwaway. But more often than not, when I get to work with these lovely cast members, doing a pass where we really ground it down often is the thing that feels most authentic. And so that gives us a little bit. But I mean, like when it's silly, it's silly. But if
Right.
it's silly and we're being really straight faced about it, there's something that makes it more entertaining, right? Like it's more relatable, I guess is the thing.
I will say my only critique of the movie and your directing is sh they were the worst fake haircuts ever. Like, her waving the scissors behind for one moment and like, "Okay,
I'll take that.
you're now done."
The worst.
Now, granted, I imagine you couldn't have her spending cut or scene after scene cutting actual hair, and but
Nope.
it was the wave of the haircut and everything, so
Yeah. Yeah,
but I
I'll
think
take
that
that.
also, like I say, is what also made it kinda fun, that was Is there anything you can tell us about that movie that maybe us as fans don't know? Like a little behind the sceney thing or something that went into it, a little red herring that's or an Easter egg, I should say, that's in that movie or something?
In Cut Color Murder?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I gotta go back. It's like a
Yeah, so
year
do
and
you even remember
but I
making it?
gotta
It
Um,
was it was pre, COVID, so a lot of that memories are, not a
right, like
lot
you're
of people
just
have that.
oh my goodness, like that was a little while ago. Let's see, the Cut Color Murder.
Like, Julia
Um,
Gonzalo is a horrible human being, you never work with her again.
love her. Love all of them. Well, it's not very interesting, I guess, but like the last thing, like where we played her husband's grave was in like literally the backyard of the house that played as her home. So lots of camera trickery basically in there to make it feel like it was really in a cemetery, which
Right.
we schedule wise we couldn't get to, and it had this little hill that went up to this like lovely set of trees. And so you scout and you do all your things, and we're like, okay, these lenses, this spot, this is how we can make it feel, this is going to be super, this is totally going to work. And then we showed up on the day to shoot it, and we had what was called an atmospheric river, which happens up here, where we get a colossal amount of water basically that falls very quickly. And so, we can get upwards of 60, 70 mils of rain in a matter of hours, which is a lot of water. So it wound up being incredibly difficult to just get up this little hill for her because the ground became so muddy. And then we couldn't get like, we were trying to get the cameras to where we needed to get the cameras, and you could like the ground was sinking, and we had plywood out, and people were falling down the hill, and it rained. We had to rain cover her, and all this chaos is happening. I fell down the hill at one point, like my feet slipped out from underneath me. I was covered in mud. Like it was like is that's how it went, in this like wrap up and moment with the pictures falling on the ground, and it's just torrential. Like if you could listen to the sound that was happening that was being captured at the same time, it was out of control, like, just like, you're just hearing it all come down, and, you get to the end of it and you're like, "Well, this was great."
That's fascinating because I'm just doing a little mental, you know, flashback to that scene, and I can't even comprehend how that is someone's backyard there because it completely has that feel to it. So kudos to
Doesn't
you.
it?
You made up for your phantom haircuts
My
with that
pattern haircut, thank
with
God,
that scene.
yeah. I was close.
All right. All right. Now we're going to talk about the big one, that Mystery 101 that we alluded to.
Yeah,
That was the crown jewel of the Hallmark mystery, roster there. And not that you knew it was going to be the final episode,
I
but
know.
it still is like their biggest, feature in that franchise. And looking once again, maybe it's just inaccurate, but looking at your IMDb, that seems like that was your like kind of first big director-ish role. And is that not
That was my first movie with Hallmark, yeah. So I'd done a episode
like
of, the CBS series Charmed just before that.
right? Okay, but is
Uh
like were you like looking back, are you surprised like Hallmark gave you the keys to that vehicle, going knowing what it
yeah,
is and everything and where you were in your career?
I think directing is an invitation, right? So to be able to direct, it requires being invited to do so. And I don't know how else to phrase that. That has remained consistent. Like, it's not like I can just go, "Hey guys, what do you got for me?" It's they have their movies. They are looking for a story to be told a certain way, and then whatever director for them that makes the most sense that's in their, bank of directors are the ones that get shortlisted, or ultimately that they'll reach out to. Um, Christopher McNeely was the exec on that show, and I wound up working with him a number of times, and hopefully this year I'll get to work with him again a few more times. But Chris and I had done a cold call, which is something that your agent will set up for you to meet different people that are outside your wheelhouse or your knowledge base, right? And so, um, and we got along really well. And I think whatever it was about me that Christopher saw, or what my background was, he felt like I would be a really good fit for that show. And so that was a combination of Chris um, putting me forward to the network, who had some familiarity with me. Like there had been some discussion about me directing something for them just before COVID and the world shut down. But yes, looking back at it, I'm it's surprising that they gave me the opportunity that they gave me. Certainly, as they're very, as the first time director coming in on their roster. I was obviously super grateful for the experience, and also like really understood that I needed to make sure that I did a really good job, right? And honored the things that needed to be honored for the viewers. And certainly working with Christopher Palaha and was great because Jill was very welcoming, Chris was very welcoming. We could have great discussions about how their characters sat, and they were phenomenal at being underneath of what their storyline was, right? And how we needed to make sure that we honored things that had happened previously. So it turned out to be still one of my very favorite experiences that I've had
Well,
with
I,
Hallmark.
I think you read my notes here because my next question is, what was it like stepping into a franchise where six other directors had told the story and now you're coming in to continue that? And obviously you want to keep a continuity and these
Yeah,
characters are established, but at the same time, you're you, so it's going to be there. Like, how do you come in and take over a franchise like that?
I think it's I think it's like not dissimilar to any television series or anything that we go and we work on. It's we're hired because we have a specific way that we do our work. Um, I had a specific vision for how I wanted to do things, and by and large, they were really excited to do things the way that I was pitching them forward to do it. And very rarely did I come in with a decision or like an idea that we navigated out of, or we decided that there was a better way of doing it. But it is a collaborative business, right? I think you can't be too focused on what everybody else has done in television series or in TV movies, right? Like we understand the format. When you watch it, you understand what the viewer likes. Certainly there are things that a network or executives will share that are important to them to make sure that they capture that, keeps in your storylines or, keeps the viewer comfortable in what they're watching. But we're also hired to do what our vision is and bring things and tell the story in the way that we see the story. And so, is that kind of answering your question?
Yeah, yeah. Going there though, what's interesting is, as just a fan, and this is what we talked about a little before, there's the fan aspects of things, and then there's people who are actually in the business who have a very different knowledge. Is I was surprised when I saw that you directed that one episode, and then I assumed you directed all of them, and I said, found out, nope, just that one. And then I went back and I looked, and it was seven different directors for all of those. And as a fan, I would just watch them and they seem seamless. They don't seem very different for the feel. And
Yep.
I'm wondering though, if I sat like you and I were sitting on the couch and we did a little marathon 101, would you be able to say, all right, see how director A went through there? Now look at when we get to Deadly History, see how I did. Like if I was more knowledgeable and everything like that, would it be more apparent that it was six different people or
Quite possibly. I mean, if you're comparing different styles, sure. Like there, I mean, the reason why there's such beautiful continuity is because of the strong storytelling from JCP, right? Like the writing is the thing that makes it brilliant, right? And keeps the story kind of moving forward the way it does. But yeah, I think if we sat side by side and we took two of the shows, it would be you could tell there's a little bit of a difference, right? Because
okay.
different people, and but it's kind of great that you don't know that, because what that means is that you're well connected with the character and you're able to watch the story in a really great way, and you're not coming out of the story to look at what the technical stuff is, because that's good storytelling, right? Regardless of who the director is doing this show, if people are not like, you don't want somebody going, why is the camera moving so quickly? What's happening? You just want them to be invested in what's happening, and that just augment their experience, right? Of what's happening on the screen. So I think that is to the network's credit for the people that they hired and brought in on the show, right?
Did you have anything where you're like, okay, Stacy wants it this way, and they're all looked at you like, well, wait, we've done six of those. What do you like? Was there any like particular one that you remember that maybe was a little bit took a little coaxing of them to get them on board, or were they pretty much, okay, you're good, we'll roll?
I think that, honestly, like they were so trusting and we had such a good time. There's nothing that kind of pops in the top of my head right away that was like, oh, that was a big conversation. The kiss was really, there was a lot of discussion that went into the kiss. with them, and I have some specific things that
Was
I'm
she
not a
pregnant in
huge
that one
fan of.
too?
What's that?
Was she pregnant in this one? Because I know she was
Yeah,
pregnant in a couple.
yeah. So there was some discussion that went around the kiss, right? And how that was going to be shot, and how, because we knew that we needed to deliver that really well for the fans, and have some opportunity to navigate it and post a little bit too, right? So it's so I think that one probably was a bit of a conversation, but yeah, there really wasn't anything that I can recall, to be really honest with you, that we had to talk a lot about. Like there's one shot when they're sitting with her dad in front of the fireplace and they're having a conversation. It's at nighttime and the fire is going, and that was the one night where we were struggling to kind of make it happen. And so, I think it was like something to do with the floorboards, the way that the the actual floor and the location was laid. And so when we were trying to track along it, we were getting a lot of movement and motion out of the camera that we didn't want. And it just, technically, we struggled a little bit on that one. But even then, everybody was just like, okay, how do we fix this? We came up with a plan and then we just did it, and they were all lovely. Like,
What do you have to say to all the people out there who say that Hallmark should just delete that 5 minutes at the end of it and end it, and on the happy moment versus the scene in the rain and Jill with her fiance and
well,
everything?
I mean, you can turn it off when you want to turn it off, but
That's
that's not
what I
how,
always say, but
like
people
it does
want it
not
literally cut and erased from
doesn't need to
the
be a happy
planet.
thing. It doesn't need that. Like, maybe that's wasn't the direction that the story was going, right? Like, I don't know. Like, I know a little bit about where we thought we were headed, but at the end of the day, I don't think things have to be, happy and put together and locked up. And, if we're talking about a mystery, doesn't that push the mystery more? Don't we want to know where it's going to go? Right? Like,
Right. I guess the thing is, people are saying, but then Hallmark didn't ever give it to us and canceled it without concluding, and everyone wants that happy ending. Now, one of the things, we're fortunate enough where John came on us and read what his vision of episode 8 would have been, so people can get a little bit of closure there. But at the end of the day, too, if you don't listen to our podcast, you're never going to know that, and you don't get to see it delivered. So I know I'm
that
with
was
you.
really,
I don't feel I need it, but a lot of people are like, the fan base for there is very strong, very strong.
it is very strong. It is very strong. And you know what? Great. Like, isn't that to the credit of the product at the end of the day? Like, if we just want to talk about just the straight product, it's lovely that there are people that are so invested in those characters and in that story. Like, everybody that was involved did it really well. What was possible for that series? Like, we've all watched shows that we're very passionate about, that have done all sorts of quicks and turns and stuff in the succession of their episodes. It would have been very possible for them to have a very dark turn there and have some really interesting things, to move forward in that series and to create something that was amazing and marvelous and different and whatever those things were, right? Like, if that's where they thought they could take it, then wouldn't that be fun? And but not everybody's happy all the time.
All right,
So,
we're going to talk about the exciting new thing coming on, Crime Time
mm,
Freefall. So
yep.
one of the things, and we just, we talked about how people get upset with the Mystery 101. They don't want any other mystery ever produced by Hallmark, or, just give us another
Uh-huh.
Mystery 101. We don't want anything else. So what are we going to tell people to get them excited? And also, by the way, Hallmark's had 4 new mysteries. This will be the 4th new mystery this year, without having another continuation, like a cut color murder
Yeah,
2,
like the cut color murder.
right? Like a little bit of the continuation that we all want.
Yeah.
So what are you going to tell us to get us excited for this mystery?
Well, first of all, it's Lindy Greenwood and Luke Macfarlane. Like, I love, if they were adopting, I would want to be adopted by them. I love them so much. Like, they're just the best humans, like really the best humans. This movie has that ensemble, great cast, great community, really got like that cozy mystery feel that Hallmark does so well, but with a fun, comedic, like great humor edge, to what it is that we did. And I love it. Like at the end of the day, it's got this really lovely family component to it, community component to it, which again is like in that wheel of love affair for me, right? Like people who make shifts or changes in their life because of whatever it is that's happened in their space and wind up finding this whole new world or network and people and community and warmth and caring and awesomeness that's around them. I think that there's that underpinning of hope is amazing. And as we get, as you get through the story and stuff, I feel like you're rooting for that a lot in this one, which is super great. So not only do you have that like great chemistry and fun banter and like in that spirit of like, the round and round vibrancy of dialogue, which I've done a lot for Hallmark and things that will be coming out this year that I'm not allowed to talk about, and I'm not going to mess that
You're the
up. But
worst.
I'm the worst. I'm sorry. I really want to tell you, but I'm not allowed. It's like there's a different spirit to how we're doing this. And I really feel like this is reflective. Like if a mystery was going to come to me and it was reflective of the things that I loved about the movies that I've done for them that I really, really love. Um, all kidding aside, I think that this particular product is fantastic. And I would love to see us shoot another one of these later this spring so that we get a couple of them this year. But fingers crossed if the fans love it,
Well,
maybe we could make it happen.
that's
I would love it.
I said that's one of our big things. Sorry to cut you off there, but is we think, and it gets back to it. Yes, it's a business. So as fans, what we want doesn't always make sense. But one of our big things as a fan is we think all mysteries, they should, if they're going into them, they should just say, we're going to do 3 of them, hell or high water, because it allows you then to develop the character, to develop the story, because there's a few of these new ones where we're like, okay, we see it, but they just didn't get enough room to breathe or to develop, right? But if you give it another 2, it could really be good.
Yeah.
And then when you just get the one, you're like, okay, I got invested, and then it ends. So that's our thing. I know you probably wouldn't argue with, getting greenlit for
Oh.
having 3 in a row. The checking counts. There's worse things than having book business.
And being a
But
working
but I
director, yeah,
think just from a
definitely.
fan standpoint, we think like all of them should have 3. Okay, I do have one big question though,
Okay.
and you got to be honest.
Okay.
Does it end on a cliffhanger?
Well, come on
Of
now.
course, you could lie, but
Come on now. I don't know. I don't think this one lands on a cliffhanger, not in the same way that certainly the cut color murder or the or mystery 101 did it. Yeah, no. Short
okay,
answer is no.
okay,
It doesn't end that way. Not in a way that's going to torture the viewership.
right. Because
No, I think it's good.
they have a lot of them now where they end with a good tease and a good door opening of, hey, we could have this, but not a thing where it's, what the hell, I need to know this answer, I need to know
Yeah.
before I can move on.
Yeah.
Even if you
That's right.
did
No.
like a little short, give us a 5 minute, okay, Julie, who the hell is this guy, what's going on, we need to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
But
No, we don't end that way. I think we end in a way where we're like that, like we're with them. We're invested in them, but we're not left like with, hanging off the side of a cliff. So
and and we want, like I say, we want at least 2 more, if not 8 more, but
yeah.
and I haven't even seen it. All right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit before, despite their ability to be great parents, Luke is, I mean, he's the classically trained actor in the Hallmark studio, right? I think he's great. Chris Palaha, I think, is the best, just hands down actor for range. I just think he's on a different level.
Yeah.
But Luke is
Chris.
also, he's fantastic. And
Yeah.
from talking to a lot of the people I know who have worked with him, they
Mhm.
say just working with him is a whole different experience. What is it like working with someone like of that pedigree compared to not I'd say the normal Hallmark actor, but Erin
No, no, I
Cahill,
understand.
fantastic actress, but she came
Yeah.
up as a Power Ranger, right? So she didn't do the Juilliard, but she's still fantastic, and I'm not demeaning her at all. But he just has a different thing to his skill.
One of the things with the Christophers, and the Lukes of the world, they really they have a different energy about them when they're on set, right? And I would say, Lindy absolutely has that quality about her as well, and it sets the tone for everybody else in the room, which is quite brilliant. Because they come knowing the words, but knowing the intent behind the words in such a in such a visceral and present way that it changes the way that the other actors respond to them, right? And so it's also wonderful to be able to be so specific without unraveling. Like with Luke, you can be very, very specific about the technical side of things, right? His movement or placement or things sometimes which with another actor could unravel them, where it takes away from the performance because now they're too busy thinking about the other things. And every once in a while we get ourselves in a little bit of a technical rabbit hole, right, to try and execute what we need. And somebody like Luke or Lindy or Christopher like are so amazing at being able to keep the tone and say the words and do all of the things and not get flustered by whatever the other components may be, right? um, I love Luke's collaboration. I love how we can have a conversation about something and he doesn't necessarily need to win the conversation, and neither do I, but it's always like the best for the story always comes out at the end of the day, and it's quite brilliant um, to work with him. He is a special human. He's got a really really, lovely skill. I'm a big fan. I've done a couple movies with Luke and,
What was it, like the sexy Amish man or something like that?
yeah, I'm the Amish stud. Yeah, there's
Amish
the
dad.
there's the best title ever of a movie. When my agent said, I need you to read something," I'm like, "What's it called?" And she said, "I'm not gonna tell you." I was like, "Oh boy, that's gonna be a good one." But, also, like, it's silly title aside, he played as a sociopath. Like he played and he played it brilliantly. And all the goofing aside, I think that role was super interesting to do with him because he did such a great job of it. And then, to do something, in the Hallmark wheel with him, like that's he and I laughed on the first day of set. We were like, high five, not like the last one. Here we go. um, but when you have people that are so good at what they do, um they make working with them easy. It's joyful because they're so on top of who they're there to play and what their role is, in a positive and professional manner. So that is amazing.
You have Lydie playing the nosy sleuth, the amateur sleuth, right? So one of the fine we talked about before, fine lines with the round and round, secondary characters, but for these is making that nosy sleuth still be something plausible, that they why they're in the crime, why they're in there, and you're not just like rolling your eyes like, oh
Mhm.
please, that's just too silly. How did you create her character to be like, okay, she is justified being in this little caper, which I don't know what it is yet, but I'm assuming there is a caper and she's involved as the nosy sleuth since she's not the cop.
So Lindy plays a celebrity, um, and the official is a celebrity finding purpose, stepping back into the role that made her famous. So she is a uh, long time police procedural cop
Right.
whose show gets canceled and finds herself in this environment where now she's taking her skills as a investigator, and actually finding ourselves in the middle of an actual murder. And so it's really fun. She's so fun. Like Lindy came to the table with so many awesome like ideas, and just that again, like it's that same thing for me over and over and over again is we can do a lot of these really quirky characters and fun stories if we really ground them, if this is just who they are. The second it feels like they're putting on a mask to be something else, I think is the moment where it doesn't land anymore. It doesn't connect. And so to, really play this quirky LA character with, her kids that finds herself in this, you know, in Colorado, it kind of just made,
Wait, this takes place in Colorado?
yeah.
I'm all right. I'm one state away. I'm never moving there. They all take place in Colorado, and everyone
Lots
seems
of
to die
murders
in.
in
Yeah,
Colorado.
yeah. I got to
Yeah,
stay
very
away from
murdery.
Colorado. All right.
Very murdery. But it's like that Mystic Falls, element to it. And it's really like it's fun. It's so fun. She's so fun in it, and she's so grounded. Um, and so honest in the way she plays it that you just, I don't know, I love her. We just did the final mix for it on Thursday. So I've now seen it in its conclusion. And we got to the end of it and we all sat back in the mix and we were like, gosh, this is fun. We had such a good time. I
Who
hope everybody really enjoys it too.
who's in that room with you when you're seeing that final?
So in the mix winds up being our sound technicians and then the post producer and myself. So
Okay,
yeah.
so they're it's not the actor type people. It's just you technical people.
No, but they did see
Okay.
some stuff at the TCAs earlier this week.
Right.
So they were also um
Which I was a little annoyed that I was not invited to. I should have been part of that.
unbelievable.
I know. All right. So last question on it is what's something like maybe a behind the scene or something that give us a little fun story that when we watch it, we should, keep in the back of our mind.
Oh, something to look for. Oh, I love that. We had so much fun with the trivia night, right? And there was so much more in the questions and the laughing and stuff. And our one character that runs the trivia night is just, genius. He's just got one of those voices where you're like, could you read the phone book to me? Just, just to do it, right? But we had such a fun time in there. So yeah, like on Lindy's.
Were they real questions or was he like just riffing and making them up as he
Yeah,
went?
we did some real questions. We did a little riffing on the exit. Oh, there's a little thing like on the exit. The first time that Lindy exited that scene, there was actually she tripped over a background performer that was sitting in a chair. So she picked up her stuff, and as she turned around, she literally kind of tripped into this fellow that was sitting in a chair behind her, who had like just adjusted his seat position a little bit, and that was a complete accident. And then and that was mastering the show, and so then we wound up having to try and repeat that that accidental moment for all the coverage and stuff. So that was kind of silly and fun in that. um
You just made me
but
nervous because as I talk to all you guys, keep saying you gotta cast me as one of the backgrounds just so I can get in one. And now you have my fear of I'll be the guy who's sitting there and just be like turning like, ooh, what's going on? And then taking
yeah.
out the star. I didn't know I had so much pressure just sitting in a chair. Now I'm all
So much
nervous.
pressure, so much pressure.
Oh boy.
um
Oh boy. All right. Well, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. Ask you what you have coming up, but you've just told us like time and time again that it's top secret and you can't. Is there
it's so
anything you can share? How about a quantity, a quantity of how many things we
um
can expect to see Stacey N. Harding this year or
thank
coming
you
up?
for making sure my middle initial is there. It sounds like I will be doing two mysteries over the next 6 months, that are additions to the mystery wheels that
That's
I know
nice.
you guys like. So I feel like we have two movies coming in on the backs of things that hopefully the viewers are excited about. And I have a little rom-com-y project that sounds like that's going to move forward, and that'll be coming to you in June. And that one has a broad food element to it, which
Ooh, I love the
is
food ones.
fun. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right, Stacey, this was a lot of fun. I thank you very much for your patience. We talked a
Yeah.
long time. I didn't. This may be my longest interview ever, but you had so much interesting stuff, and you literally have just hit after hit that I was like, when I was going through my questions, I was like, oh no, I gotta ask about it. Okay, I can do it. No, I gotta ask about it. So I greatly appreciate your patience with me.
Absolutely. Look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Hey.